Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you all for the outpouring of support received on Instagram. It really means a lot. I have a big announcement before we get into the video. The diver, I'll have a big newsletter going out next week in regards to the diver. So if you're not signed up, please sign up. It will really be something you'll want to be informed on. Obviously, we'll be sharing it here as well on our channel, but I will be sharing all the details and information to our newsletter first. As for today's video, we wanted to go over likely the 5 most common mistakes people will make when manufacturing a watch. This is going to be in no particular order. It's just 5 main points, and obviously my experience in watch manufacturing is extremely limited to non-existent. So my dad's going to be going over all of that stuff.
All right, these are not in a specific order. They are what I consider, in my experience, to be some of the most obvious or overlooked mistakes. If I start with one that seems to be quite obvious, each watch or almost every watch requires spring bars, and if nothing is indicated to the case manufacturer, he will use the smallest spring bars that he can get away with. Average, they normally use 1.4 millimeter spring bars. And if you don't indicate you want bigger ones, you will get with the minimum. And those things, they last maybe a year or two, and then you have to have them replaced. So the cost difference between a 1.4 millimeter and a 1.8 or 2.2 millimeter spring bar is less than a penny. So
they're making huge savings on doing this to you.
They are just going with the default, and if you're not saying anything, that's right, they will pocket a penny per spring bar. Okay, so keep that locked in, because that's a non-negotiable issue when it comes to manufacturing. If you calculate the difference in strength, a 1.4 millimeter spring bar to 1.8 is about 30% stronger. To a 2.2, it's about double the strength. Sometimes a 2.2 or 2 millimeter spring bars are not able to be used, so use for sure 1.8 millimeter spring bars, okay? And make sure they're stainless steel 316. If you don't say anything, a lot of times they're 304. And a lot of times the manufacturer will get by with that, but sometimes those 304 spring bars, they get charged magnetically quite a bit, and then there you go. There's another problem. So number 2, basically on a similar basis, are O-rings. Rubber O-rings or silicon O-rings. These O-rings are standard is 0.6 millimeter. Now, if you have a diver's watch, you need to go up to about 1 or 1.2 millimeter in O-ring in order to have water resistance on the level that you require it. For other watches, if you don't say anything, it is 0.6. They could easily put a 0.8 millimeter O-ring in there for the case back, but if you don't indicate that, oh well.
You'll notice a very common theme here. A lot of it has to do with you saying something.
That's right.
The problem with that is you have to know what to say beforehand. It's not like there's going to be a checklist or say, well, do you want this? It will just be done.
Yeah, they will not ask you for it. The price difference between 0.6 and 0.8, it doesn't exist, okay? So again, you gain about 30 to 40% security and water resistancy if you use those O-rings versus the 0.6. Insist on it, even though they say it's not necessary for the water resistancy that you use. If it's a 3 ATM or a 5 ATM, that is not necessary. However, for the long-term reliability of your watch, and so you can make sure everything is okay, go with a bigger one. So those are very, very basic. They don't cost anything. I mean, it's whenever I price out a new watch case, it's constantly the same thing. They always come with the standard. So if I don't say anything, and if you're in the same boat, look at that and make sure it's changed, okay? All right, couple other things in regards to movement selection. Movement selections are, it's somewhat of a sensitive subject, specifically on quartz movements. The preference is to go as cheap as possible on quartz movements. And, you know, if you don't need a date, and if torque rating is not necessarily important, yeah, by all means, go a little bit cheaper. But a lot of times you do not know what the torque rate of a movement needs to be, because your hand selection is most always the last one. So use a high torque rate movement. The cost difference in doing that versus a low torque rate is maybe 30 or 40 cents on the quartz movements if it's a Japan movement.
For those who don't know, what is the torque rating?
Well, the torque rating is the strength of the minute hand, specifically minute hand or second hand moving forward. If your watch is banging against something, then the second hand can either move backwards or forwards, or also the minute hand. And for you to make sure that the second hand constantly moves forward correctly in the step motor that it's planned to, the torque rating of that second hand is paramount in order to do that. So if you have I can show you the test that you could do. You'll have to do it later, okay? So if you bang your watch against your hand and the second hand stops running in an interval of a second, and you bang it again and it just stands there, that means your movement is weak or your second hand is too heavy.
Now, I was at a meeting, and if I'm not allowed to share this, I'll cut it out of the video.
Oh.
But when we were in Vegas and we met with those the two Japanese guys.
Oh,
and
yes.
they brought me because
yes.
I've talked about it before. I lived in Japan. I speak Japanese. So we went and met with these guys, and they were meeting with movements. What company was it again?
Seiko.
For Seiko. And how at that time, how many movements were you buying a year?
I was buying about 70,000 movements from him per year.
Okay, so a lot of movements. They were coming, showing him other movements, and the guy took the watch off his wrist. I can't remember which one it was, and my dad started banging it against his hand, and it did that. The torque rating apparently wasn't good. At this point, I had no idea what was going on. I was just along for the ride. And it was at that point that I learned how you test for this and what it is and why it's important.
Yeah. So watch out for that. Mechanical watches, not the same, but the torque rating is also important. However, there is far more tolerance in mechanical movements than you have with quartz movements. Make sure that you use hands as light as possible to make sure in any case that the accuracy of the movement is guaranteed. For those that think, okay, I can go as big as I want with my hand, then be careful. That might not be the case, okay? Because it can be expensive if you put on a handset that is not made to run with the movement. So that is quite an important aspect of putting together the watch that will function correctly. The last one I'd like to talk about shortly is to make sure quality assurance is followed through. Not specifically I'm not talking about quality control, which is during production or after production, but quality assurance, which deals with aspects before production, where you know to anticipate according to manufacturers what their weak points are, and that you can overcome that with them, or direct them to, or change the technical drawing accordingly, so it's not going to be a problem. A lot of times that is probably one of the most expensive mistakes that is being made in manufacturing. So be aware of these things. They're very simple, but they can save you a lot of headache and a lot of hassle.
Yeah, so just some things to share with you guys. I know we have some micro brands that watch us, so I'm sure this is a lot of stuff you're aware of, but there are a lot of people who aspire to make their own watch, if not start a micro brand, but make their own watch. And it's something that people are interested in, and there's not a whole lot of information out there. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you guys next week.
Take care. Have a good weekend.
That might not have been 5 things.
Steve, you said they're coming at 5:30?
Yeah. Spring bars, gaskets, movements,
Oh, and
quality assurance.
You're recording.
Yeah.
Why?
It's okay. I'll change it to 4 things.
Is it 4 things?
Well, it is now.